You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
So I was cleaning my desk yesterday and today, and I was putting up a new shelf, which needs to be better secured, but should work okay until tomorrow when I get more L brackets. But as I was cleaning things up, I came across this. Pretty sure this is the Batman the Animated Series Batmobile or a variation on it. I don't know where it came from. I don't remember getting it. Don't know if it was a gift. But suddenly, and it was buried in my desk, like under papers and stuff. So it's been here a little while. Have I really become that much of a geek that I have something that's kind of cool, that is cool, and I don't remember it at all? How weird is that? Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Just realize that when you pull it back, the wheel, it takes off, which is cool. And also, it does fit into the soap sack. So, yeah. I'm a little off, I know. So, let's see. Who do we got here today? We got Triple B, we got Ed, and we got Cool. Hello, gentlemen. Good to see you. Ed says at my age is pretty common. I'm lucky. I remember my name half the time. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I remember things like I posted a picture on Facebook today that is, I want to say, from the summer of 1992. And I spent 2 different weekends as a bodyguard for Clive Barker. And basically what it was is he was doing the Marvel books at the time, Hyperkind and Ecto Kid and stuff like that. And he was doing local signings. The first one was at the comic shop that I went to, and the owner of the shop asked if I could come up and help do security, and I did. And and when I got there, Marvel was there, saw me, and went, "Okay, you're just going to stand with Clive. Anywhere he goes, you're going to go," because I guess someone had gone up to him at a convention in England and asked him to sign in blood, and then cut their own hand open to get the blood. And Marvel went, "Yeah, we're not having that happen." So I was assigned to stand next to him and behind him. And then at the end of that day, the guy from Marvel came up to me and said, "Hey, we're doing another signing next weekend in Orange County. Can you come there?" So I spent 2 different weekends basically. And so there's a ton of photos of me with Clive Barker. Yeah, that's not creepy at all. But I posted on Facebook this picture of myself and Clive, and it is a very long time ago, because Clive has been started working out. He's gotten really big and buff. This was back when he was like real skinny. His voice was very different. I don't know if he has something with his throat, if it's smoking, but he talks more like this now. And back then, he sounded more like the 5th Beatle. And Clive wasn't one just to come in, sit behind his table, do the signing, and leave, he would get up and wander out and try to figure out how to better organize the crowd, and would walk into everybody. So I'm like following him back and forth. And of course, I'm much younger and smaller at the time too. It's a pretty interesting photo. Maybe if JD wants to steal it off my Facebook page, you can show it here. But yeah, I forgot to, didn't even know I was thinking about talking about that here. It's so old that it's a Polaroid picture. It's not even an actual picture. It's Polaroid. So, but yeah, that was probably 30 years ago, easily. All right, we're going to jump into the news. The plan today. The plan today is to do the news, and then we're going to talk about the Mandalorian penultimate episode, and we'll do some key collectibles. I have a good topic for today. There it is. Yeah, I had Clive sign it. So a very young Clive and a very young Dan. How's that for a flashback, huh, guys? All right. So let's get to the news. And let's see. We got some news on Blade. We got news and a rumor. It's kind of an interesting combination. After spending the past year in horror movies and getting a lot of really good critical praise, the star of Pearl and X, Mia Goth, is going to be moving into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Deadline is saying that how many people out there have an autographed Polaroid? True. So Mia Goth is did some Googling, Dan. Looks like your Batmobile may have been a 1977 Taco Bell kids meal toy. Wow. That's pretty impressive then. See if there's anything on here that I don't see a date. It's Jada Toys, Jada. There might be a date on there, but I'm just too blind to see. But so thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so but back to it. So Mia Goth is joining Mahershala Ali. Jan Dimage is set to direct. Michael Starberry is the writer, and of course Kevin Feige is producing. But the plot details we don't know that much about, or who Goth is going to be playing. Now, for those of you who don't remember much about Blade, or your entire experience with Blade, are the movies, Wesley Snipes movies. The character was actually created by Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan back in 1973 as a supporting character for Tomb of Dracula. It popped up in number 10. Is the sound way out of sync for anybody else? I don't think so. Let's see. I'm going to snap. You tell me. 3, 2, 1. Are we out of sync? Okay, Mr. Producer, what do you want us to do?
Just refresh your browser when we go to break.
Okay. So I will do that when we go to break. So let me get through the news, and then we'll take a break. So Mia Goth, Marv Wolf and Gene Colan created him in Tomb of Dracula number 10. The interesting rumor that's going on right now is that he may not be fighting vampires. We're not sure what's going on, but the rumor is that it's not going to be Blade going up against vampires. Now, will it be werewolves? Will it be some other kind of monsters? Will he go up against Skrulls? Maybe he goes up against a version of Kang we don't know about. Who knows? But yeah, could you imagine a Blade movie where the bad guys aren't vampires? That's going to be interesting. Okay, Ed says he's now synced. it fast forwarded. That's kind of cool. All right. Moving on to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. That's finally popping up on the tracking for the upcoming film. Blade versus Elsa Bloodstone. Now that's interesting. That could be good. Ooh, what if it's Blade versus Werewolf by Night? Yeah. So, all right. So Guardians of the Galaxy is coming out, Volume 3 is coming out in May, and it's starting to show up on the tracking boards. Right now, it's 130 million is what they're estimating it to be, which is interesting. It's lower than the 146 and a half that Volume 2 opened up at, and that also kicked off the summer. So, there's a little concern there, but people are not too concerned yet, mainly because the campaign hasn't really kicked off, the big marketing campaign. So there's a good chance those numbers are going to jump, but they just start off at 130. So the highest domestic opening for Marvel Studios since the pandemic was, of course, Spider-Man No Way Home at 260, and then Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness at 187. Now, the Guardians franchise has grossed more than 1.6 billion worldwide. Could you imagine back when they said, hey, we're going to do a Guardians of the Galaxy movie with a talking raccoon and a tree? And they'd come back and go, the first two movies are going to make 1.6 billion. I think you would call them a liar. But in 2014, the original Guardians made 333 million domestically, 773 million worldwide, with the sequel bringing in 389 million domestically and 863 worldwide. I'm expecting that the third one is probably going to do a little better than both of those. So, all right. This is a story we talked about yesterday, but I'm going to bring it back up, which is the casting for the DC animated series Creature Commandos was announced. Part of it is what I missed. Sean Gunn is going to be voicing two characters. He's going to be playing the Weasel, which he did in the Suicide Squad movie, and he's going to be voicing G.I. Robot. Frank Grillo is going to be Rick Flag. Maria Bakalova is going to be Princess Ilana Rostovic, who I believe is an original character for the animated series. Indira Varma is the bride. Zoe Chow is Nina Mazursky, or Professor Mazursky. Alan Tudyk is Dr. Phosphorus. David Harbour is Eric Frankenstein. And Steve Agee will be returning as John Economos. Now, Gunn has made it clear, of course, that if they are the voice in the animated stuff, if the character moves to live action, then the same person will be playing the role. And Nathan Fillion is the ghost of the detachable arm man. I miss that character. But so today when we do our key collectibles, we're going to talk about the first appearances of all those characters. So that's why I wanted to bring it back up. So, and most of them are pretty inexpensive. Now would be a good time to jump on those characters, those issues before the animated feature or the animated stuff comes out, because suddenly Dr. Phosphorus and Mazursky and the bride and all that are going to be much bigger characters. We learned that even though the upcoming Ahsoka series is going to be building towards the big Dave Filoni live action film that's going to kind of tie together all the Mandalorian era shows like Skeleton Crew and Ahsoka and Mandalorian, it doesn't guarantee that Ahsoka will have a season 2. It all comes down to how well the series does if fans show up for it. Because even if it needs to tell a certain story to set up the movie, if it doesn't have the audience, they won't do it. So it's not a guaranteed green light. So if you are an Ahsoka fan or want to build up towards that, make sure you watch it. Got some financial numbers, which are pretty interesting. Deadline has released the numbers for 2022 movies, and there were 3 major MCU films in 2022. That would be Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Thor: Love and Thunder, and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Now, of the 3, the one that had the biggest worldwide haul was Doctor Strange, 955.7 million. Black Panther was second at 859 million, and Thor 4 took in 760.9 million. Now, once that's the gross, that's the amount of money made at the box office. Now, once the theaters have taken their cut and you subtract the cost, now the cost of these films is a lot higher than we think, because not only do they have the budget of making the film, they usually double that in advertising. So if it's a $200 million movie, you can expect to put another 200 million into advertising. Well, the one that cost the most was Thor. It cost $547 million. That's the total costs for that film. That's not counting what the theater take. This is just the cost of the film itself, and that's a good 50 million more than either of the other 2 films. So when you break it down, the net profits, hands down, Doctor Strange wins. Net profits on Doctor Strange was $284 million. Black Panther was 259 million, while Thor was only 103 million. Now, I realize saying only 103 million is kind of silly, because it's still over $100 million. And anytime you can make $100 million, that's a good day's work. So, but the interesting thing for me is that we can now break down how well a franchise does over 4 films within 11 years, because you can look at all the different Star Wars movies, but they haven't really had 4 films connected together in around a decade. They've kind of popped all over the place. I guess they sort of did with the sequel series and then Solo, but not really. So Thor, when you're looking at the same cast over and over again, make 100 million from 250 million investment is not a success. No, that's 100 million above that. So you put in the 250, you get your 250 back plus 100 million.
That's what I mean. It's when they put in 250 million, they want to make 500 million.
Yeah, I could see that. So looking at the Thor franchise and combining where they were to like 275 days past the film's release, once it's out of theaters and everything else, there's a lot of consistency with the film, maintaining the same stars, like I said, close to the same budget, adjusted for inflation, and mostly the same length. Ragnarok is the only one to go over 2 hours. Now, when you compare the 4 films, it's normal to look first at the opening weekends, with the original Thor making about 65.7 million. The Dark World made 85.7. And then Ragnarok made 122 million, which is amazing if you think about it, because Dark World was not a celebrated movie. Dark World got ripped on by critics, was not a fan favorite, and people were questioning whether Thor should go forward. So the marketing on Thor Ragnarok was brilliant to get across that they were doing something completely different. They were doing humor, much brighter. So it jumped, almost 40 million dollars. And then Thor: Love and Thunder, off of the success of Ragnarok, made 144 million opening. That's really solid for a franchise when you look at you chart the character base growth for a character that really wasn't a top tier character. It's like Iron Man. I think Thor was probably a little lower than Iron Man, outside of the comic industry. Now, the interesting thing for me is to see how the film did at, what percentage of its overall take was the opening weekend. Because that tells you how well the film did critically, because, how much was opening weekend and then word of mouth. So Thor Love and Thunder, which opened big, it took 42% of its total take up front, where, the much maligned Dark World took 41% of its take. So neither one of those films had long legs, basically. Most of its money came from its opening, where Ragnarok only took in 39% of its total on opening weekend, and the original Thor movie only took in 36%. That means a larger amount came later on in its run. Now, the original film made $181 million in its run, and it was a shorter run. It wasn't in theaters as long. It was only in theaters 34 weeks, where the other ones, like Ragnarok, was like 60 weeks in the theater. But Dark World bumped up by about another 20, making $206 million, but was in theaters for like 179 more days. And only made $25 million more. So you can see that this is really showing the ups and downs of, there's a certain path that films take. But I think the biggest bump came not only from the change of tone on Ragnarok, but also the appearance of the Hulk. Showing the Hulk in there, it made over $300 million. But again, the excitement from Ragnarok propelled Love and Thunder at first. It opened 21 million higher, but then it only made 28 million total more than Ragnarok. That means that even though in higher ticket prices, stuff like that, it only brought in an additional 7 million over that same amount of time. So we can really kind of break down the numbers even more if you really want to geek it out, but I think we'll leave it there. We'll go ahead and take a break. And are we still having the lag problem, JD?
Yes, definitely want to refresh.
All right.
It's going in and out.
Okay. I will refresh my browser. We'll come right back and talk about The Mandalorian. We'll be right back.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today. Comic Collectibles is a pretty straightforward show. You got Rex here, he sells the comics, and you got Rockin' Robbie, he knows about the comics. And finally, John, well, no one really knows what John does. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but he just keeps showing up. Come to think of it, I don't even really know how he gets in here. Anyway, awesome comics, rare books, rarer signatures, slabbed books, and amazing cover sketches by Ken Hazer and others. Simple formula, you want the comics, you buy the comics. To sum up, Rex sells the comics, Robbie knows the comics, and John, who might possibly be a ghost. I mean, seriously, has anyone ever seen him show up or leave? Comic Collectibles with Rex and John, Mondays from 6 to 8 Eastern on The Experience. Comic Culture and Sales.
Go follow The Experience on TikTok at @the_EXP1 or scan the QR code on the screen. Our TikTok is like everywhere else we are, except you only have to deal with us for a minute. Seems like a win-win to me.
Just kidding. Welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We are going to talk about The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 7, the penultimate episode called The Spies. But stick around. Right after this will be What's in the Box, then Space Cadets, and Sketch Up with Mel and Mog, who have their guest Amy Hunt, I believe, today, who does the book Night Witch. So it's a pretty good lineup here. You want to stick around for that. Also, tomorrow night, we have a special thing going on the Original Art Experience. They have an entire Spider-Man comic, cover and all, up for sale. The original interior pages, drawn by John Romita Jr. and inked by Scott Hanna. So the entire book is going to be up for sale. So you want to check that out, see how it goes. Plus, there's going to be other John Romita Jr. artwork, and they always have a great supply of different pages and stuff to pick up on. All right, so big complaint people have been having, not me, but about the current season of The Mandalorian. Can we give to the little spoiler thing up here, just in case? Thank you, sir. The big complaint people have been having is that they didn't feel like this was really getting any place. So we were kind of, going over here and doing a side quest, going over here and doing a side quest. Well, we finally got there. This is all the loose threads being brought together, whether it's him trying to rebuild IG-11 from season 1, the pulling together of the different Mandalorian groups, just down the line, the cloning stuff. This was the episode that brought everything together, and it had a cliffhanger. So we're going to break it down. One of the things that I noticed is that people talk about how the show feels a little small. Giancarlo brings all the smug. Yes, he does. You'd have like the episode where the pirates are attacking and all the villagers are trying to escape, but you never see a large group of people. You see 20, 30, 40 people, but it doesn't, it seems like Navarro, it should have a lot more people on it, but you never see a large group of people. Or in this episode, you have two different tribes of Mandalorians getting together to try to retake their home planet of Mandalore. But again, you only get to see a couple dozen Mandalorians. You don't really get this sense of a lot, like an actual army full of people. You get just a handful. So I think that's where some people's complaint that the show feels small. You look at the sequel series, there's that scene with the First Order, and there are stormtroopers everywhere, all over the place. So, You don't get that here. I mean, the most people they ever had in a scene had to be in the first season when Moff Gideon showed up with all his stormtroopers, and they had to borrow from the 501st and get them to come down in their cosplay armor and make them suddenly series worn armor, so, or screen worn artifact or pieces. So that's another thing that I hear. Now, a lot of that I understand. I get that when you think about it, but I tend not to think about that as I'm watching the show. I'm just trying to sit back and enjoy it. And I did. This was a really good episode. And I enjoyed the last episode too, even with Lizzo and Jack Black. But this episode really is the culmination of a lot of what the show has been building up to. It's, there's been a lot of talk that Mando, Din Djarin, has been kind of pushed back, and this has been more of Bo-Katan's season, which a little bit it has, but the show's called The Mandalorian. They don't necessarily say which Mandalorian. We've been following Din Djarin, but it's possible that it could bounce around. As long as it's a Mandalorian that we're following, I think people shouldn't complain. Now, again, Din's the one that we're attached to, him and and Grogu, but I think people just want to complain, honestly. So this episode pulls together what used to be the Death Watch, the Night Owls, and puts them together. And you've got one group that are basically religious zealots who insist on keeping their helmets on, and the other group who thinks of them as religious zealots. So they're already at odds there. We do have one moment of fighting between the two, and of course, it's Paz Vizsla and Axe Woves, the two hotheads of the group. And I don't know how they ended up playing whatever the game is. It's like chess, but not. But of course, they get into a fight. Ed brings up an important thing in the episode. Grogu gets a mech suit. And they have avoided having him speak forever. I mean, that's the whole thing, is eventually he's going to talk. But once he has a voice, there's no going back. So the longer you can hold out and not have to use it, the better, because it's like the name Grogu. They finally gave him his name, and a lot of people didn't like it. Yeah, when he talks, he's a toddler, not a baby. He's 50 years old. So, also, a lot of people seem to think that he's going to talk like Yoda. But that's not necessarily true. We've met another of that species. We don't know what the name of the species is, nor the original planet they're from. That's how George Lucas wants it. But Yaddle, who we met in the prequel series and also in Tales of the Jedi and Clone Wars, does not speak like Yoda. What we've learned through the legends and books and stuff is that Yoda's speech pattern is actually based off of his mentor, that he learned to speak that way from the guy that trained him. So it's not a race thing. They don't all speak like that. Yoda does because of who trained him. That said, we had almost words from him in the beginning, which sounds like he was trying to say, this is the way. But now that he's got the buttons, it reminded me about those videos you see on TikTok and YouTube of the dogs that press the button. That they can choose certain buttons to say words. But they only gave him the two buttons, the yes and the no. I think it would have been cool if they would have given him a couple other buttons. maybe one that just says this is the way. But he uses them in interesting ways. Yeah, that creeps me out. Yes, 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 yes. So they did have that comedic moment in there for such a huge episode, and it was a long episode, but they did get that comedic beat in there of him using the suit. And but what's funny is I don't necessarily think the suit is a good idea, because in the first episode, or the second episode, when they go to Mandalore and they have to jump down and do all these things, the little bassinet or whatever that hover ball is, that allowed him to float down and to fly and do all these things and go fast. When the ship was about to be destroyed in this episode, two Mandalorians had to grab him by the arms in the IG-11 or the IG-12 robot and carry him off. So it's almost, I call it a pokeball, okay, but it's almost a deterrent at that point. It's almost detrimental because it doesn't have flight, So yeah, he can walk around, but we haven't seen if he can fight with it. It doesn't seem to have any weapons. So it almost seems like the Pokeball was the better thing for him because it was more maneuverable and faster. So I don't see it being a benefit yet. I'm sure they're going to find a way to make it so, but I wonder if he can get it to use a lightsaber. Maybe he'll pick up the dark saber with it and use it. So this episode, of course, they have to bring the two tribes together. They go to take back Mandalore. They get there. They find other Mandalorian survivors. Ed says he was surprised when he broke up the fight in the suit. Yeah, I think everybody was. I don't think anybody saw that coming, But it makes a lot of sense, And it's funny how Din keeps talking about things like, well, I didn't train him to do that. I didn't train them to do that. So was diplomacy something they taught him as a Jedi in his years? I mean, they focused on diplomacy that young? I think Grogu showing up in that suit without big gun plane was a missed opportunity. Yeah. I was hoping that it was going to be at least have the Taika Waititi voice in almost like a Jarvis way in Iron Man suit, but we didn't get that, at least not yet. But of course, the interesting thing is we see the Shadow Council for the Imperials. And there's some interesting characters in there, a lot of them coming from the Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff like that. But one in particular, the one who's focused on the cloning, General Hux, is the father of the guy from the sequel movies, Hux, who ended up being the informant for the Rebels. And the neat thing is that the actor Domhnall Gleeson, who plays Hux in the movies, well, the general in that is his real life brother. So they got his brother to play his dad. So at least there would be a similar look to him. There are, of course, references to Grand Admiral Thrawn, and we can see that Thrawn is going to be the big bad of all this. But we get the idea that Gideon is not in Thrawn's camp. Gideon is more for himself. He's not working with Project Necromancer. He's doing his own cloning stuff. And I kind of get the feeling that he's trying to clone a version of himself. And this is speculation. Do we got the wild ass speculation, Donkey? Didn't know I was going to need it, but I think what Gideon is doing is he's trying to create a line of clones, maybe just himself, but maybe a whole line that are going to be force sensitive and have Beskar armor. And basically, he's trying to create the ultimate warriors. So they'll be able to use the force, they'll be able to have the armor and all that other stuff that he wants to build in. And I think he wants a clone of himself so that then he can rule with all of that ability. That seems to me like the gist of what Gideon's doing, is he's trying to make the ultimate soldiers, the ultimate weapons. So Ed says, you think there's going to be a throwdown between Thrawn and Gideon, or do you think they're going to have the Mandalorians take out Gideon first? This is just, again, speculation. I think that we're going to wrap up the Gideon story next week. I think there's going to be losses. I think people are going to die. But I think we're going to wrap up the Gideon story and end up with the whole, Thrawn and Shadow Council out there, knowing that that's the sword of Damocles still hanging over them. Even though they don't know it exists. I think the Gideon part will probably wrap up by the end of this season. But again, that's just speculation. They might not, but I think that they need to put a bow on the Gideon story before they can move on to Thrawn, because I don't think Gideon will take a back seat to Thrawn. I think they're going to need to eliminate him. So, and I don't think we need to see the infighting between them. I think Thrawn will be his own thing, and that's going to start with Ahsoka. I don't know if we're going to get another season of Mandalorian, or if this is all just going to move towards the movie. We'll have to see. It'll especially come down to how they end it, or even if Din Djarin's going to come out of this alive. There's a chance that he's going to get killed in this. Always a possibility. So he has been taken capture at the end. We do know that there are Beskar armored stormtroopers. There's a Praetorian Guard, whatever it is. And Paz Vizsla had his big fight scene to end it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all this ends up next week. It's going to be a fun episode when we can talk about it. Praetorian Guard, thank you. Post-credit scene for the episode 8, Thrawn's face. Either that or him showing up, him finally returning. Ed says, I want to see the ISD Chimera do a flyover like they did at the beginning of the original trilogy, maybe flying towards Mandalore or something like that. Oh, that would be interesting. The Chimera is Thrawn's ship, so when he returns, it'll return. All right, let's go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we're going to do some key collectibles. See you in a minute.
Why was Princess Zelda sad after watching a bunch of YouTube videos? She couldn't find the link in the description. We'll stop if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's super easy. Click subscribe and click the bell when you do, and thanks for supporting the EXP.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
You know how when you go to Comic-Con, after Comic-Con, you go to the hotel bar, and there's a whole bunch of people playing music and dancing, and you've got Pikachu and Lara Croft Tomb Raider doing the cha-cha slide just down from Deadpool and Batman and Wonder Woman? That's every Saturday night over on the Experience Twitch channel. Join Taji Beats for the EXP Dance Party, exclusively on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Programming on the EXP is made possible by viewers like you, or your local comic shop, or that Kickstarter you backed, or the publisher you like, or comic industry professionals who want to share a message with the world. Really, anyone who wants to advertise with us can. If you're interested in seeing a product you know and love, or are creating, or are publishing, or are involved with, advertised here on The Experience, and having your message shared with our viewers, please reach out by scanning the QR code below or visiting our website and using the contact form.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Do me a favor, hit those like and subscribe buttons if you're new here, and let's get into some key collectibles issues. We're going to do Creature Commandos. Creature Commando is something completely different. We're not going to talk about that. Commandos are the DC hero or monsters that become a task force. And it's going to be an animated series, and we're going to kick it off with the first appearance of the Creature Commandos. Took place back in 1980. Weird Tales number 93. Weird War Tales, excuse me. I made a typo there. Now, this is probably one of the higher cost books that we're going to cover today. This is going to the high end for $125. Median range is about $40. Low end is about $12. But this is where it kicks off with Rick Flag Sr., Frankenstein, a werewolf, and a vampire. Next up, we have the first appearance of Professor Mazursky, who is the creature from the Black Lagoon-like character we see in the animated clips. She first appeared in Young All-Stars number 12. This one's really cheap. You can pick up a high-end copy for $3. So a buck or two for a mid-range copy. Definitely a good one to add. Now, Creature Commandos got their own solo series in 2000. Very different lineup, as you can tell. And this, again, another one. Creature Commandos number 1, you can pick up for $3 on the high end. You know, a buck or two, you can probably find it in a dollar bin. Okay. Frankenstein first appeared all the way back in 1948 in DC Comics, in Detective Comics number 135. Now, this isn't necessarily the Frankenstein from Creature Commandos, but this is the Frankenstein from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein involved with Batman and Robin. This one goes for about $1,000 for a high-end copy, $300 for a median, about $115 for a low-end priced one. The actual Frankenstein that gets part of the Creature Commandos and stuff like that, or that's more likely to be part of it, is based off the Seven Soldiers version, where Seven Soldiers Frankenstein number 1, this is a version created by Grant Morrison and Doug Mahnke. And this one, another inexpensive one. It's a $3 comic on the high end, you know, so a good one to pick up and see if it climbs. Issue 3 of that same series in 2006 was introduced Lady Frankenstein. Now, those numbers are wrong. Let me pull up my list. Yeah, that's another one that's like $3, $2. So not much going on there. I don't know why. That must have been left over from the week before, the night before, or so. But yeah, there is no officially a bride. That's what they're calling her in the animated series. But Lady Frankenstein was introduced here. Okay. Weird Tales number 101. Weird War Tales again. I did it twice. At least I'm consistent. From 1981. This was the first appearance of G.I. Robot, and they called him Jake as an acronym. This is a $10 comic on the high end. You can probably pick one up for $3, maybe even cheaper. But G.I. Robot will be in the series. He'll be played by Sean Gunn. And again, it's probably going to be mainly a CGI thing. Dr. Phosphorus. Now, this is one that has actually already been rumored to be making a jump to live action. I'm not sure what show he's supposed to be in, but they're already talking about him. He debuted back in 1977 in Detective Comics number 469. And this is going to be played by Alan Tudyk. Now, this is about $40 on the high end, $12. You can even probably pick up a reader copy for $4. First appearance of Weasel, who again was in Suicide Squad, the James Gunn version, not the David Ayer version. He first appeared, or she, I'm not sure if Weasel's a guy or a girl. It was in Firestorm, the Nuclear Man number 35 in 1985. High end on this, $15. Median's about $5, low end's about $1. You can see it's got Plastique and Killer Frost in it. So, all right. First appearance of Rick Flag Sr., not to be confused with the Rick Flag we've already seen in the Suicide Squad. That's Rick Flag Jr. So this will be played by Frank Grillo. Secret Origins number 14 in 1987 introduced the character. High end on this is about $10. Low end, $1 or $2. And of course, Suicide Squad number 1 of 1987 is where we first meet John Economos, played by, in the series, he's played by Steve Agee. He's appeared in the Peacemaker series, and of course, he was in the Suicide Squad movie. High end on this one's about $25, $8 in the middle, and maybe about $2 for a reader copy. So those are the main characters for the Creature Commandos. Now, there's other characters that could pop up, but I didn't really pull those. But Creature Commandos has always been kind of an interesting series. Like I said, it started off with a patchwork man, a werewolf, and a vampire. They weren't called Frankenstein and the Wolfman and Dracula. They were given actual military names. They were soldiers. There was a soldier who got turned into a werewolf. It was a soldier who got pieced back together out of body parts, that type of thing. So Creature Commando has been interesting. There's also in the original, there was a Medusa as well, which was kind of an interesting one to throw in there. So, but she doesn't appear in the series. They're going with more unique characters, like I said, G.I. Robot, Dr. Phosphorus. It's kind of a take on the Suicide Squad meets the Monster Squad. And it's likely going to be the first thing for the new DC. So keep an eye out for that. I'm not sure when that'll release. I know that the Superman movie, Legacy, will be the first big thing. But this will be part of the Gods and Monster Chapter 1, as they call it. That and the Amanda Waller series, both of which will probably premiere before the Superman Legacy movie. So, all right, guys, we are going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Remember to stick around for What's in the Box, Space Cadets, and SketchUp. Plus, tomorrow, be around for Original Art Experience, which, again, has a full issue of Spider-Man. I believe it's Spider-Man number 11. They originally told me 7. Now I think it's 11, including the cover by John Romita Jr. and Scott Hanna. And, of course, tomorrow night we also have Comic Unlimited Live. Don't remember what the name of the show is, but it's
Friday Night Live
with Comics
Unlimited.
from Comics Unlimited from Tennessee, which Tennessee is all up in the news lately. So that should be interesting. But thank you all for tuning in. I will be back next week. We will definitely be talking about the Mandalorian season finale, and we'll see what else comes up. So I will see you guys next week. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Do you remember what it was like when you were a little kid and you got a letter in the mail? Now imagine that letter was filled with information about your favorite shows, pop culture questions, links to things you're going to want to see later, and even sneak peeks at upcoming programming here on The Experience. That's what the EXP mailing list is. Every week, we send you sneak peeks, information, and all of the relevant links for all of the shows you want to see. Sign up now on our website or scan the QR code that's on your screen right now.